Hi, I'm Kathleen Cooke. Welcome to this webinar brought to you by the National Religious Broadcasting Conference and the Christians in Communications. So we are so happy to have you with us this afternoon. We know this is going to be a time of learning and of encouragement. And so we've got two great women lined up today. And so we're just really excited to have you with us. I know some of you are just still popping on. And so we're just kind of waiting for just a few minutes right now while some people are popping on. But we just want to remind you that the National Religious Broadcasters is a national organization and to check them out at the nrb.org. And know that their conference is coming up in Dallas in June, the 21st through the 24th. So join us there if you're especially in the Dallas area, or if you are a Christian, or if you are interested in media or entertainment. We'd love to have you be a part of that organization. So again, welcome to the National Religious Broadcasting webinar this afternoon with us. I'm Kathleen Cooke. I'll be your host for this next hour. My husband and I are co-founders of Cooke Media Group, which is a production company in Los Angeles, and also the nonprofit, The Influence Lab. And we work with Christians and in the secular world in Hollywood as well, in producing movies and television shows and many different forms of media, digitally, commercials, branding, all of your needs. And so we're excited to be here. I've been an actress in Hollywood since 1992, a Screen Actors Guild actress, and been a full-time producer alongside my husband in our company since 1991. So we've been around here in Hollywood for a while. We know the challenges that exist. And I think today, the two women that are on the panel with us today also know those challenges. They've are world setters and globetrotters and are consummate professionals in the industry. So we are excited to have them here with us. I love to see men and women who are fueled by their passion, by their artistic talents, and are willing to take up the challenges of coming to Hollywood, going to New York, stepping into the secular communities as well, where challenges are rich and full, and yet they keep God alongside with them. And so I encourage you as Christians working in media to continue to do that. We are advocates for Christians to do media effectively and to do it with excellence. So today I'm going to get started here real fast and introduce our two panelists. Our first panelist is a good friend and just a precious mentor of mine over the years, an encourager of mine, Nancy Stafford. Nancy is an actress, an author, and a speaker. She's best known for her role on the Andy Griffith Show, on the award-winning show Matlock many years ago, if you've been around and seen her. She's also been a series regular on the Emmy-winning shows St. Elsewhere and ABC's Scandal. She's done numerous movies, and you can check out her movie roles on her IMDb page. But recently in 2020, she was awarded the Best Actress Award for her role in the film First Lady by the International Christian Film Festival. She is a consummate performer and excellent at what she does. But Nancy goes even further. She has gone on now to directing, and she's been directing several films. Damaged Goods is a thriller that will be released real soon, as well as Love by Drowning and the TV series Eleanor's Bench. And she just wrapped shooting a feature film called Paul's Promise. Nancy's also a best-selling author. She's a wonderful writer. She has two great books out, The Wonder of His Love, A Journey into God, the Heart of God, and Beauty by the Book, Seeing Yourself as God Sees You. She is an inspiring speaker, and she challenges others to live their lives of significance and pursue their dreams with excellence. She has a wonderful first husband, Larry, who's a musician. They have an adopted daughter and some grandkids, and they live here in LA. I call Nancy my ever-ready bunny because she never stops. So welcome, Nancy, to the webinar today.
Thank
Tell
you,
us.
Kathleen.
Yeah, it's so
Good to
fun
be
to
here.
have you.
You
Yeah.
too. Thanks, sweetie.
So, I just kind of went through the whole bio kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, but give us your journey. What from, give us your heart in your journey in just a few minutes, a little bit of your
Okay.
story.
Okay. I started in Florida in a Christian family, grew up with a relationship with Jesus when I was just a kid, went off to college and didn't really turn my back on the Lord, but because I wasn't in fellowship, unfortunately, little by little, I just started drifting away from a vibrant relationship with the Lord. I still consider myself a believer, but I wasn't really an active practicing one, I would say. I have a degree in journalism from the University of Florida. My first career after college was actually as a journalist. I was a PR marketing person as well. I was in the industry for about a year in South Florida and then got a phone call from an agent in Miami who remembered that actually the year after college, I was in the Miss America pageant. I'd been Miss Florida. She called and said, I remember you. I remember you. Can you please come audition for some commercials? The Screen Actors Guild was on strike. So none of the real professionals could work. So she said, I'm looking for people who can walk and talk at the same time. Would you just come audition? Just audition. So I did. I drove to Miami from Fort Lauderdale, auditioned for 5 commercials in the course of 5 days, and I got them all. And I didn't realize, of course, in my ignorance and my naivete, that I just figured, oh, auditioning just means you get it. You just get it. So I loved this work, and I just got bitten by the bug. Kept my PR business going, my agency. I was also doing commercials on the side and a lot of modeling. After about a year, pretty much done everything I could in South Florida. So decided to move to New York to study, to see if I could do this acting thing. I knew that I needed to study it to really try to compete and to see if I could do it. So I did move to New York, enrolled in Stella Adler Conservatory. Right away, started working with the Ford model agency as a model, a lot of commercials. My first acting audition was for a soap opera called The Doctors, which I got. After that show ended, about 2 years later, I was brought to Los Angeles and started getting right away into my first TV series out here, which was called Saint Elsewhere. And this whole time, I am really not following the Lord, but I hadn't totally abandoned him either. But then when I had a sort of crisis in my life, the Lord had just opened up every door and pushed me through it. So the business was going well, but I had a health challenge, a health crisis. And suddenly I found myself faced with, oh my gosh, where's my security really lie? And it caused me then to have a very radical conversion back to the truth of Jesus Christ, instead of the Buddhism and Hinduism and New Age philosophies that I'd begun to follow. So since that time in, say, the early 80s, I have just fallen hard and been running hard after Jesus. And it's just been a remarkable season in time. And God, again, as you said earlier about opening new doors and going down lots of new paths, I've done a lot of different things. And he has me now on a track after a number of years as an actor. I was asked to write a book for a Christian publisher, which I did. That led to the next book. And I've got more in the pipeline. My heart is for people to know who they are, their identity. So everything I work on like that speak about or write about tends to do with, but remember who you are, who God says you are, because really we can do the impossible for him if we always stay grounded in who he says we are and what he has for us. So since then, it's also been opening up doors of producing. I've got several projects in the pipeline, TV series and a couple of movies, and a stage production, a world-class musical based on the Four Tops story.
Wow.
And then I did direct, actually only directed one project so far, just the movie that we're now in distribution, courting distributors about, called Damaged Goods for Asbury University. So I'm always I'm like you. and Phil and so many of us, wherever God seems to be aiming us in that direction, I have full, complete confidence that, okay, I'll go that way
Yeah,
because you
great.
clearly are giving us new opportunities. And I think that's such an excitement for those of us, especially people of faith, who God wants to stretch and take us into new territories to make an impact.
That's awesome. Yeah, Nancy, like I said, you're my ever ready bunny. You just keep going. And that's what God calls us to do. He calls us to go, doesn't he? Doesn't tell
He
us
does.
how to do it or what's going to happen, but he expects us to trust him. And when we
Yeah.
do, then he trusts us more with big and bigger things. And that's
Yeah.
what's exciting. So a
Yeah.
journey with him is never dull, is it?
That's for sure. Pretty challenging sometimes.
Well, I'm going to bring Sam into the conversation. Sam Sorbo, so fun to have you with us today as well. Sam is an accomplished Hollywood actress as well, an international fashion model as well, nationally syndicated radio host and producer and author. She's fluent in 4 languages, and her acting career spans many different films, from Bonfire of the Vanities and 20 Bucks, and TV shows with recurring roles on the hit TV show Chicago Hope. She met her husband on set, Kevin, and Kevin was the lead, was Hercules in the TV series Hercules: The Legendary Journeys. And they ended up getting married in 1998 and are currently raising three young boys and homeschooling them. And Sam has a heart for homeschooling parents specifically, and children. And she encourages them to teach with love, which I love. Sam is on the front line of our present cultural shift, as well as she speaks passionately about our historic values and can be seen on many nationally syndicated news shows. She has a voice to encourage others to stand on their biblical beliefs and truths and to amend the many dilemmas that are happening in our culture and our world today. She has a recent book out called Words for the Warriors, which targets how to understand the language of our culture. I'm an advocate of understanding our language and understanding what's being said. And she feels that it, like I do, that it's essential as we work in media and entertainment. Sam may be married to Hercules, but she's Wonder Woman. She challenges us every day and every moment to trust Jesus in the many uncertainties that we face, the sufferings and the battles that we face in today's world. Sam, welcome to this webinar. So fun to have you. I'm so glad you made it today. Tell us in your own words just a little bit more about your background and your journey as well.
Well, I'm speaking to you today from the ICFF, where Nancy won her award last year. So that's kind of a cool coincidence.
Yeah.
And I'm also a resident of Florida, where Nancy began her journey. So that's kind of funny. I went to college for biomedical engineering. I was dissuaded from pursuing anything in acting because it wasn't a reasonable path forward. Mind you, my teacher my drama coach or drama teacher in high school was an actress who clearly hadn't made it. And so she was biased against anybody making it, because if she couldn't make it, then nobody could, obviously, right? And so I kind of came back to acting sort of in a circuitous route. But eventually I found my way to acting and managed to, although I wasn't quite as successful as Nancy was right off the bat, I did get, some very, very good roles and worked my way sort of up the ladder. And then I met Kevin, and that sort of changed everything, mainly because at the time that I met Kevin, well, we got engaged, and then it was a big conundrum over how I was going to make it work. And I had prayed about finding a man because I wanted to be married and I wanted to have children. And I prayed to God, and I finally realized, I can't have everything. Society teaches us that you can have everything. You can have the career, you can have the kids, you can have the family life, and you can have the big, success and all of that, right? And it simply isn't true. And so I finally reconciled myself with that after a lot of prayer. And I said to God, okay, I get it. There has to be a compromise. Just tell me what the compromise is. Just tell me, is he going to be short? Is he going to be dumb? Like, what's the compromise so that I know what I have to settle for in order to get it all? And so God showed me, because I met Kevin, who was perfect. I met him in New Zealand. I played a princess on Hercules, and it was love at first sight. And that story is in his book, True Strength. It's a fabulous story. And then after we were engaged, about 4 months before we got married, he had 3 strokes. And so we were in the ICU, and I landed a very lucrative television commercial for ice cream, which happens to be my favorite thing ever. And right, and it was a national, Nancy knows this lingo, national network spot, pays a lot of money back in the day. First class flights to New York, all expenses paid. It's a lot of money on the back end. Like, it was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because God doesn't work in, small increments. When he wants to show you a lesson, he's going to lay it out for you. And I went into the intensive care room, and I said to Kevin, I got the job. Do you want me not to go? And he said, yes, I want you not to go. He was literally lying on his deathbed, having suffered 3 strokes, and they were still trying to figure out how to fix him. And I realized, oh God, that's the compromise. I trade my career. Done. And that's it. And I was so grateful, because it was a binary choice. And it was very clear to me, if I loved this man, then I would give up this other thing. And I loved my work. I didn't love my work. Not like I loved this man. And my work wasn't going to give me children or a family or, how, like, so to me, that was, I guess, the real, I've been on a path searching after God for many years. I was raised in an atheist household. And that for me was like the I won't say the final sort of, I prayed to God. I fervently, I knew God, right? But boy, when he gave me that lesson, boom, it was, okay, all right, God, we're in this together now. You've got my back, I'm going to get yours. And that's where I am today.
Wow. What a story. And, I love that, Sam, because it kind of leads into really our first question that I had for you guys today. And that was the challenges. What we all have these challenges that come into our lives. We are all real people. For some reason, when people see us on screens or they see us out there within the media, they think, oh, well, she must have this perfect life, this perfect family, no health issues, no financial issues. There's just, yeah, exactly. So Nancy, address this. What are the challenges that you faced, and how can we face them in this industry well?
Well, it's so funny, Sam, that you were talking about Kevin having his near-death health experience before you got married. My husband did 2 years ago, but he's fine now, as both our guys are. Hallelujah. But it really does. One of the biggest challenges really is that whole issue of, are you going to trust me with your whole life? Mm-hmm. Are you going to trust me with your personal life, your physical life, your relationships, and your passions and your dreams and your careers? And I had to make a choice. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is that we cannot underestimate the seduction of this industry. And whether you're in Christian media also, or certainly in Hollywood, in any aspect, whether you're an executive in a tower or running a network or doing a church ministry that's worldwide, or you're an actress on set, we cannot underestimate the power and the attraction of fame, money, notoriety, power, all of those things. So we have to be cognizant of that all the time. And that's going to inform every choice we make. Just like you, Sam, when you were talking about, it was clear to you like that, where I'm going to choose. So one of the first challenges I would say is be always aware of that. Don't ever underestimate it. And in my own life, I've had to learn over and over and over how to say no. And my choice came when I had just gotten married. I was only married once. I was 35 when I got married for the first time. My first husband. Hopefully the last. But I had waited a long time to find a godly man, and finally did. And I'm 35 and I want to start a family. And my show Matlock got canceled. Now, we were a top 20 show. We were a workhorse of a successful show for the network, but they hated us because we skewed gray. We were not the demographic they wanted. We skewed old for our demographic. So they canned the show. Another network came to the plate and said, okay, we'll pick up the show, but it prompted a move to North Carolina to do production because it was going to save $500,000 per episode. Well, I'm not going to go to North Carolina the year after I get married at 35. I said, no, I didn't get married, wait all this time to then spend 9 months of the year in another state. So I left the show. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't my immediate, oh, yeah, Larry and I talked about it. He said, oh, I'm fine if you want to do it. But I realized, you know what? I want to start this marriage right. I want to start it on a foundation that really is totally godly and really sets us up for what's going to be best for our future. So that's just one of the challenges, long distance relationships, so many things. So anyway, I just want to throw that in too about, sometimes we have to say a hard no. And yes. The other advice is, and it's saying no about other things, not simply location and moving to another place, but saying no to jobs, saying no to scripts. I mean, I've lost agent after agent after agent because I've said no. When they say you don't want to work, I go, you don't have any idea how much I want to work. Yeah. I don't want that work. So we have to just learn to say no and not worry about it.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question too. And Sam, I'll let you grab this one. So we've all had those opening projects we've done as young actors. I did a whole slew of infomercials and commercials, a lot of car commercials, a lot of things like that to kind of get your foot in the door. But now that you are a consummate actor, you have things that come at you, projects that come over your desk, so to speak. How do you choose those ones that God wants you to truly go after? And how can we not spin our wheels so much on projects that God doesn't want us to go into, or that really will take us nowhere? Do you have some advice on how you choose your projects these days?
Oh, sure. Give Nancy the easy question. So one thing that I'd like to point out with Nancy's answer is that she chose marriage over that particular job. And that's really choosing God over that particular job. And really, I think that's the call. So for me, I got to tell another story.
I love stories.
So Kevin and I were living in New Zealand. I had basically walked away from my career, and he was still very ill. Then we moved to Vancouver, and I thought, well, in Vancouver, I can go back to acting. We were trying to get pregnant. We weren't pregnant. I went back to acting in Vancouver. Strangely, the Canadian Guild doesn't want Americans coming and taking Canadian jobs. They're fine with sending Canadians down to the United States to take Americans' jobs. And so I couldn't act. Eventually I got pregnant, and I had 3 children by the time that we ended up moving back to LA. And I thought, oh, I'll go back to acting in LA now because now I can, and I'm in LA. And it was probably my 3rd audition. I came home and my toddler ran up to me and said, no. And I was like, that's odd. And I picked her up, put her on my hip, and she turned to my nanny and said, bye-bye. And so again, I was faced with a binary choice, because that apparently is the way God speaks to me. He's like, here you go, pick it. And I realized that my kids didn't want me, gone. And if I'd gotten a job, I'd be gone. Acting is long hours, sometimes traveling. It's all of that. And so I walked away from acting again. I walked away from acting, again, right, for the second time. And then years later, God redeemed it. He gave me an idea for a movie, which I ended up co-writing and producing and starring in. And so he showed me the way. And I could never have in my wildest dreams written that story, that this is how this would work. And yet here I am, and I'm on a webinar presenting to other people, in a sense, how you can get this done. I think it's very important that you listen to that voice, and you have to set aside time to hear that voice, to hear the voice of God. And I know people struggle with that language. I'm not saying that you're going to hear the words in your ear, although that happened to my husband, but I am saying that you will know in your heart what God chooses for you, and that's a very important and really ought to be adhered to, right? It's very important input.
Yeah.
So I don't get a lot of offers for jobs that I wouldn't want. I mean, there are projects that they're not going to go anywhere maybe. And so that's something that I'm like, well, I don't really see the point in, that would be spinning my wheels. I have a lot of projects that are just on I can't stop doing stuff. I mean, my books, my podcast, and by the way, go to samsorbo.com for anything about home education, because that's like my big thing. Christians really need to be educating their own children and not sending their children to Baal or Moloch to be educated. So, I have several passions, and God has seen fit to energize me in many different directions. And I think that if you have that passion and you have that energy, you really ought to pursue it no matter what.
Yes.
I had an assistant who worked with me for a couple of years, and when we parted ways on very good terms, she said to me, the one thing I learned about you is just do everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I pop?
Yeah, go ahead, Nance.
I just want to dovetail off of what you said, Sam. And you said it a couple of times that, the Lord will speak to you in that still small voice. And I think that's the secret, is if we just stay in the Word and we stay in prayer and we surround ourselves with godly, mature people to bounce. I can't tell you how many times I've really called some trusted friends. I said, I'm not being offered two terrible, these aren't choices between a good and an evil thing. These are two very viable, very good, very worthy things. Or I also have this other opportunity that should I just be spending my time doing that instead of this? So anyway, I think the counsel of the Word and the counsel of the Lord and godly friends is a good one. But the main thing, I think what we're all saying, which is exciting, is that the choices we make tell the world what we believe.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what,
So,
to add to that, we are in a crisis these days with our churches being shut down. And can I just say, where is that whole separation of church and state that we are fed all the time? Where did that go when they decide to dictate to the church? And I would urge pastors to say, separation of church and state, get out of my church. And I would encourage Christians to encourage their pastors who think that everybody is afraid. When 2 Timothy 1:7, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. At the same time, we have to understand that part of the reason we are in the morass that we are in culturally is because media sets the tone for the culture. Media dictates to culture. And so Nancy has done a commendable job in choosing the projects in which she agrees to participate. And that's something that's very important as Christians. You are sending a message.
Yes.
You're sending a message when you go to school. You're sending a message when you go to work. You send a message of what a Christian is willing to put up with, what a Christian is willing to represent. Really just, what a Christian is what a Christian is, full stop. And we ought to take that into consideration.
Yes, yes. I so agree with you, Sam. I remember early on as an actress, when I got my very first agent here in Hollywood, I sat down with him and I said to him, and this is really good advice to anyone going into the industry, or with if you're getting a new agent, sit down with your agent. He is your representative. Let him get to know who you are and what you will take and what you won't take. I remember saying, I'm not doing nudity. I'm not going to do gratuitous sex in any way. I'm not going to do, I really didn't, I told him I even really didn't care to do cigarette commercials, which were still going on at the time, or, beer commercials and things like that. I just didn't want to promote those projects because I knew that those can kind of lead people down the wrong paths. They were unhealthy. And so those were just my own personal choices, not that even they came from, drinking beer or wine or alcohol or smoking is, against Christianity in any way. It's just your own personal preference. I wanted to be a person that was known to endorse healthy products, healthy, safe projects as well. And I remember even early on having booked a commercial for a tool company. They made various kinds of tools, and they were wanting me to do an industrial type commercial, which would be shown at big conventions and places like that. And so I was able to audition. I got the role, and the next day I get this call from the same producer asking me if I'm willing to do a second commercial in a bikini topless, because they like to send a second version out to some of their reps that to get their attention and to promote their projects. And I thought, no, this is not who I am. This is not what I'm about. No, I'm not going to do that. Of course, he began to belittle me on the phone, tell me that I never go anywhere in Hollywood. I never amount to anything. And as a young actress, that hurts. But at the same time, I was solid in my faith. I was solid in who I was. And I wasn't just what I call a nominal Christian, someone who knows Christ in name only, but I was an engaged Christian. And I believe that for all of us that are moving into that industry, for new people that are coming in, the most important thing you can do is make that decision that you are going to stay engaged with God. It's like an anchor on a boat. He is your anchor in this boat of the industry, and he's going to let you drift off and give you a lot of leeway. But believe me, when you know that that is your anchor that you can be pulled back into, that is the most important thing that you can keep in your lives. So yeah, I totally agree with what both of you are saying. And I think that's truly some of our biggest challenges, is just making those right choices and decisions in what we're doing.
Kath, I know you want to move
go
on.
ahead.
Can I just say one other thing? Since
Sure,
we're talking
please.
to
let's go.
religious broadcasters and media creators, content creators who are people of faith.
Yes.
One of the biggest challenges that I've noticed a little bit too is it's not even just making choices based on morality of, these are values that I don't believe in, or I can't do that, or I'm not doing nudity, or I'm not using that language. But I've noticed even with some of the scripts I've gotten from Christian filmmakers, Christian writers, that they're ready to go make a film, and it's not true. Theologically, it's wrong. So I think we also have a challenge to be, again, mature and wise enough to realize that no, just because it's a quote faith film or a faith project, we cannot be people who put out things that are untrue. When your mother dies, she does not become an angel. This may seem like a tiny little thing, but it's not. It's getting people farther afield from the inerrant truths of the Word of God. And so we've always got to get back to that anchor you were talking about, which is the Lord himself and his word. And I think we have a responsibility to, as believers, to not just even use media to spew forth things that are really not true. We've got to, we are responsible for bringing truth and light.
Amen.
There's a thing where, you know, people are so desperate to get on camera, to get that job. They're so desperate to be working, to be, you know, verified, to be acknowledged, that they lose sight of that. And so, you know, I like the analogy of the anchor. I think sometimes you have to test the rope and make sure your anchor is still in position.
Yep.
And I'll tell a quick story. I was on the phone with the writers. I spoke to the producer of a film and talked to him about how I thought that the film needed some help. And he said, well, that's great. Would you talk to the writers? And I spoke to the writers about the film because I felt that it was important to stand up. It was based on a true story. I thought it was important to stand up to this, you know, for the story, for the film. I wanted the film to be told in the right way. And I felt like I had some input into making it successful. And so over an hour, I talked to the writers, and it was a bit contentious because they disagreed with me. And I hung up the phone and I thought, okay, well, that's one job I won't get. And then they hired me. So you can stand up for what you believe.
Yep.
And I'll tell you something after, this is kind of funny. After I did the movie and I went to the premiere, it's called Just Let Go. It's based on a true story. It's really a fantastic film. It's the first film that I've done that I've enjoyed watching myself. Like that I could like separate from watching myself and just watch the movie and go, wow.
Mhm.
And I went up to the directors who were the writers afterwards. And I said, you did such an amazing job. Thank you. I said to them, thank you for making the film that I wanted to make, because they did it. They totally pulled it off. And they only took some of my suggestions. I'm not saying they took all my suggestions. They did not. And they said to me, you know, after we talked to you, we never wanted to talk to you again. And then we realized that was the character. So I mean, kudos to them for understanding the difference between the character and the person fighting for the character, right?
Right.
And I would say that we left on very, very good terms with a lot of mutual respect, because yes, it's contentious to create together, and it should be, and we should be embracing that. So don't think that if you get offered a role that requires you to attest that angels, you know, that dead people are angels, whatever it might be, that it's not within your purview to say, I love this project, I love the story. This part I struggle with. Can you explain to me where that came from? Or can you explain to me what the idea behind it is? But at the same time, as Nancy points out, not every Christian, just because they slap a label on it, doesn't mean that it's the right thing.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. And you know, Sam, I did talk to the writer. I talked to the writer producer on this thing too, and told him, you know, what my struggle was. And I don't think they changed it, but we had a very long chat on the phone too. And he was very respectful. And I told him my views and why I didn't think it lined up biblically, and that he may want to look at that again. He didn't change the script. I don't know if it's moved forward or not, but it is, you're right. It is important for those of us who have a check in our hearts because of something we see or read. We do have the power to be able to go to them. I even had, when I was doing, I won't tell you what show, but I was a series regular on a show, and my character was, I'd heard that a few episodes later, they wanted her to have, I had a relationship in the show and they wanted me to have an abortion. And I made an appointment and talked to the writers. I went to two of the writers and sat down and just chatted with them, and said, you know, I think that's a little obvious. I think it's a little contrived. And what I've learned, I've done this several times on series, and this is harder to do in Hollywood than in the faith world. But if you come to them with something better, like Sam went to those writers and said, this is going to improve this movie if you take these suggestions. So I basically went to them and said, I have an idea. So you don't go to them with your elbows out and, oh, I'm a Christian and I'm, it got all huffy. No, you contribute to the creative process and you say, I have this idea. Would you consider it? And they did. And we did it. And I don't say that's going to happen every single time, but the Lord was very gracious in that situation.
Such a good
all this
comment.
long conversation to say that we can be empowered by the Lord to, in gentle ways, even confront what is before us, and we can have the ability to help make transformation happen.
It's so good. I mean, we all have to remember this is a collaborative business. Go look at the end of a film and see all the names that are rolling through that scroll, and know that that it is a collaborative thing, but also know your position and your place and how to go about doing it. Very wise way of you approaching it, Nancy, in what you're doing, in the way that you went. I know several times in the same way, sometimes just posing the question to them about a character or the direction that the show is going can actually turn the show. And we work with a writer here in Hollywood who was on a kind of a controversial television series for a while. And he got criticized by a lot of Christians for being a writer on that show. But he said at one point, he said, do you know how many times I was able to turn the direction of the show because I was a Christian around that table? And that's sometimes where God calls us. He calls us into the lion's den, doesn't he? He puts us in the middle of those messes and those challenging situations because he can trust us, and he can trust that we can be wise. I mean, Jesus, when he was confronted with challenging questions, he never gave an answer. He gave a question back to them. And so that's the direction we need to go, especially in Hollywood. So great comment. I want to move into a little area on just maybe some technical things. I'll start with just a little story. Several years ago in Hollywood, I took a class from Uta Hagen. And anyone knows who Uta Hagen is. She was probably one of the premier classic actors of all time. She was a Broadway actor, renowned for her work. She was just one of the beginning founders of the American Theater Company. And so she, had a lot of authority, a lot of influence. And it was an interesting session that I had with her. It was a group session. She sat on the stage with her little puppy dog in her lap, chain smoking the whole time. This was Uta Hagen. But, she had an authority. And that's the first thing I think I want to leave, viewers with today is when you have an authority that lives within you, it doesn't matter who you are on the outside, but when you bring that excellence and that authority in what you're doing, then suddenly when you make those questions and those things that we've been talking about that would be challenging to writers or producers, that you have a presence and authority there. And I believe that authority comes from within. But one of the questions I asked Uta that day was, and I had a very young daughter at the time, 6, and she started into acting at 6 years of age, and she's still in the business today. And I wanted to be able, as a mother, to influence her life, to help grow her abilities in her passion, which was immediately known to me as a mother. And I said to Uta, I said, so how can I, as a mother or someone who is helping to mentor someone in the business, what's the most important thing you could do to help an actor or an actress enlarge her career? And it was an interesting question. And she came back and looked at me like, that was a good question. So that made me feel good to begin with. And she said, great question. She said, I would tell young actors or anyone who is helping to mentor young actors to experience life, to go to the opera, go and dig ditches, go travel, go be a part of a community where you feel uncomfortable, go serve somewhere, but go volunteer, go experience different kinds of foods, go experience different kinds of animals, different personalities. She said all that goes into your brain, and that is where an actor draws from. And I think sometimes as Christians, we get into this Christian bubble and we stay in these little Christian communities and we don't reach out and see what is happening in our culture and our world today, because we don't want to get our feet too messy, or we don't want to get involved, or we think it's going to rub off on us in some way. So as actors, both of you, as producers who are producing content, I would say to you, what would be the one thing you would say to a young person today, or to someone who's mentoring someone in the business, that they could do that would be challenging to them, that would help them and further their career? Maybe something that you wish you'd known as a young actor that you know now, that you could share with the audiences today. Sam or Nancy, pop in there, either one. I'll let either one of you.
Go, Sam. Go, Sam.
Right, I'll jump in. I think that really with technology today, and the iPhone 12 has a phenomenal camera on it. If you want to be an actor, start producing. If you want to be an actor, start writing. It's through doing that we learn. So if you can't get a job acting, then get a group together, get a partner or two or three, and start to produce, start to write and direct and produce. And it's very useful to know. So there are two facets to this, right? There's the business angle, but there's also the creative angle. And the creative angle feeds the business angle, and you can't get to the business angle without the creativity. So start creating, and then use that to start the business learning process. And by the way, as a home educator and an education activist, I will say that I'm actually thinking of rebranding the term home education to self-taught, because that really is the culmination of the home educator, is that their children become self-taught. And that is the answer. And by self-taught, I mean, look, if you can get, what's the word I'm looking for? An internship. That's another great way to just start learning. Go work for free. Go knock on Nancy's door and say, Nancy, I want to intern for you. Kathleen, I want to intern for you because I want to learn whatever you do for this business. I love the business so much. And if you don't love the business that much, my suggestion is get out. Mm-hmm. Because it's just not worth it. Mm-hmm. There are other ways to pursue a passion. If you're not that passionate about it, you got to be fully in to the acting thing, or it's just, yeah.
It's too hard. Otherwise, it's too hard.
Great
because
advice.
It's 90% rejection. So, Sam, I love what you said, because it's funny. I was gonna. What?
Does you want interns to show up at your door?
Except for that part. No, I do. All are welcome. All are welcome.
Info at Influence Lab.
Yes. I was going to say that, create content. And what she said about the creative side feeds the business side, guess what? In recent years, talent agents and networks have hired staffs that their sole job is to troll the internet looking for the next big star, looking for the next YouTube person who's creating really vibrant, interesting content. And so, put together good content, but don't upload it until it's really good, because film lives forever. The internet's forever. The other thing I would say.
Hold on. Park right there. That's very good. So if you're uploading, you can upload to YouTube privately and just share with people that you know, and maybe a few people you don't know, right? Because you want to get honest opinion. Don't just send it to your friends. They're all going to say, oh, it's fabulous. Don't do that.
True.
She's right. Don't just start uploading crap. When it's good, upload it, and try to get it out there. Absolutely. Great advice, Nancy.
Yeah.
Thank you. The other thing I would say is this, about the education component. Don't stop learning. Kathleen was talking about learning through the idea of reading and museums and culture and travel, all those wonderful things, but also flat out go back to class. I go to class, not all the time, but when I need it, when I feel rusty. I went back, I used to be the audition queen. I don't know, I just was good at auditioning. And then I had a long spate of time where I never had to audition. So I got really bad at it. I got rusty. And
Yeah.
then when an audition would come, I'd freeze up and I'd psych myself out and I would totally blow it. So I went back and took a cold reading class. I was probably 50, I was in my 50s at that time, and everybody in class was in their mid 20s. I mean, I was like clearly the oldest person in the whole class. And I learned so much and I loved it. And it reminded me of the joy of why I got into this business to start with. And guess what? The next couple auditions, I got both of them because I got that oil going again. Stay in class, keep learning. And the other thing is shadow professionals. I knew that I wanted to start producing and I wanted to start directing. And I had not directed before. So I began hanging out when I was not on camera instead of going to my trailer or just chatting with other actors, which is always not the most fruitful conversations. But
Yeah.
I would hang out with the camera department. I just watch. And then I had another director that I got to know that I worked on a project with him. He directed me. And I said to him, hey, would you mind if I shadowed you sometime when you're doing a show? And he does lots of sitcoms and things in LA. And I've shadowed him. The same with writers, the same with producers. Learn what that department does. For starters, whatever your department, it's going to make you better as a whole. If you know what producers need, you'll be a much better actor. If you know what directors need, and you're going to be able to have this sort of shorthand communication, and it's just learn all the departments. You'll be absolutely adored on set.
Good comments. Okay, final question today. And this goes to what we've all been going through recently in the pandemic. So what's God taught you during this pandemic about, just what has he been teaching you specifically? And how do you see the industry changed from where it's been now until where it's going in the future? What kind of things, are there new tools that actors need to have? Is there a new direction? Was there something that God taught you specifically about your career recently and about, this whole lockdown situation that is new to you and that you could share real quickly?
Well, I'll jump in fast and then you can end with Sam.
Okay.
Obviously, we had been exposed more and more, and the necessity of video virtual auditions had been growing and growing and growing, which
this webinar, right?
Exactly. So now it's radically changed the audition process.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it'll get back to where you're actually going into a room and you're going to meet the director and you're going to meet the producers and the writers and the casting director. But for now, virtual auditions, uploading your auditions to a website are going to be the way it goes. So get up to speed. This has been a challenge for me because, I had to get the whole thing with the curtain in the back and like the stand necessary. So do it and practice with it until you're comfortable with it. The other thing I think I've found for me anyhow is in a world that has been shaken and rocked and a very historically unusual time, it gets back to, where's your security? Are you going to trust me? The industry is creeping back and opening up again, but it gets back to remember who you are. It's kind of my heartbeat again, but remember whose you are and who you are, that you have something very unique to bring to the table, that God is not finished with you. Just being out of work doesn't mean you're out of commission. all of those things, that he has something in mind for you. He has a plan and a purpose for your life. And it may be a time for a complete reset, but just trust him, press into him, and let him show you what the next season is all about for your life.
Great
Don't
comments.
be afraid, in other words.
Yes. Yes. Good, good, great. Sam, last comment on what God's taught you or some tools from the pandemic that you are putting into place.
Yeah, well, the biggest one is that we need each other, and we ought to be forming community. We ought to be very much engaged in community. That's why I'm going to promote the NRB in Dallas that's coming up for you guys. We should all be there and meet up and join together. And the other thing is, I noticed that somebody asked a question about what one should do in a situation when they've already received the movie role, but the director then made changes to the character that might go against your morals and faith. And I wanted to speak to this before. So there's storytelling, which sometimes you play the bad guy in the story in order to tell the story. So my husband, famous for God's Not Dead, playing the bad guy, he's like the greatest atheist ever because people, hate him for it, right? But that was necessary to tell the story. So first, evaluate that. And second, as Nancy pointed out, have a conversation. And so Nancy's, point of view about the abortion was, this is wrong for my character. Great. But maybe it is right for your character, but they're not then portraying the aftermath correctly.
Mhm.
And so maybe that's the way to approach it. So you just have to, approach it gently and with fervor. And you can get a movie role and you can lose a movie role, or you can get a movie role and maybe they're not going to go back to casting and they're going to have to accede to whatever your demands are. You don't know. That story has yet to be written, right? So stand your ground. That's the one thing, like, stand your ground, evaluate it, check that anchor, as Kathleen pointed out, and stand your ground. And then join us at the NRB in Dallas coming up.
Great closing comments. My closing comments to our viewers today was to remind the viewers that God had only 12 disciples, 11 of which he sent out. One, of course, we know was not sent out. He was chosen actually for his specific purpose too, and who he was. But God sent out 11 of his disciples. In Hollywood, we're sent scripts all the time. And I have people coming into my offices here in Hollywood all the time saying, well, God sent me to Hollywood. And at the same time, we need to examine what that word sent means. A disciple, his 11 disciples he sent out, he actually renamed them apostles. An apostle means to be sent out, to those sent, they're sent ones. And so I would remind our viewers today that God is sending you out, whether it's during this horrific, challenging time that we're still in, this transitional time from the pandemic that's been going on, or whether or not it'll be something in the future into areas that you are uncertain about. God is sending you, and he's expecting you to trust him and to go. In Matthew 10:16, Jesus said to them, I am sending you like sheep among wolves, and therefore you are to be shrewd as snakes and as gentle or innocent as doves. That's the posturing we need to have in this business. We need to know where we stand. We need to have that positioning and know that God's sending us out. He's sending you out today. And whatever challenges are before you, he's also finally giving you the power to overcome them. In John 16:33, he says, we are more than overcomers. We are in this world, but we are not of this world. We're called to overcome them. So as we leave this webinar, I would love for you to be encouraged as men and women in media and in entertainment and in leadership within the larger sphere of the media business, that you are to go. God calls us to go. He calls us, he's sending us to go. He's giving us the power to do so. And we then are allowed then to be participants with him and to find the joy in not knowing all the answers, but he does. We know that he has the way and that we're going to do it. He is the way, the truth, and the life of our lives. Thank you for joining us, Sam and Nancy. You were amazing today. Make sure that you connect further with them at nancystafford.com or samsorbo.com. They're also on social media at Nancy Stafford or at the Sam Sorbo can get you into their social media. It's been such a pleasure for me to host this as a member of the National Religious Broadcasting Broadcasters and Christians in Communications. They will be hosting more of these in the future. Again, as we've talked about, the National Convention will be in Dallas this year in June. So make sure that you're there for that. I'll be hosting a workshop there as well on the right story, why it's time for you to write it, produce it, and change the culture. So meet us at the NRB in June 21st through the 24th. So from all of us here from the Influence Lab, you can connect with me there, theinfluencelab.com. I write a weekly blog at kathleencooke.com, and I have a journal through the Influence Lab that I produce. I'd love for you to sign up for that. So again, you can go to influencelab.com. From all of us here at the NRB, from Sam and from Nancy, thank you for joining us today. I hope this has been a blessing and encouragement and a mentoring in your life. Go be that lamp that God has called you to be and to shine for. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much, guys.